I have a feeling that in the next election, you're going to be swamped with candidates, but you're not going to be wasting your time. You'll have plenty of those Democrats coming over, and you're going to say, no, sir, no, thank you. No, ma'am, perhaps, ma'am. It may be Pocahontas. Remember that. And she is not big for the NRA, that I can tell you.
So that's Donald Trump marking his 99th day in office, defending gun rights at the National Rifle Convention. Pocahontas, a reference you would think to Massachusetts Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren. Now, PR strategist Amanda Galbraith joins us now to take a look at the first 100 days. I want to talk about the last hour, if we can, because, you know, you don't want to get too freaked out about something like this, but this has been building, and what I'm referencing is North Korea. Yeah. North Korea launching a missile. Donald Trump today saying, you know, I'm not going to sort of back down from a potential showdown. Is this surprising in any way?
I mean, I think this is a president who was elected on sort of two things he wanted to get into. It was immigration reform and also the might of the military, right? So we just saw him drop the largest bomb in world history outside of a nuclear bomb on ISIS. So like an escalation of a war with North Korea is probably exactly what he's looking to put in the window. So while it is alarming for one and all, because, I mean, it's North Korea, it's Donald Trump, so who knows?
I think that's the thing that's the most terrifying of both, is that it's Donald Trump and it's Kim Jong-un. And, you know, the interesting thing is that when you're talking about any kind of conflict with North Korea, you have to take into account China and Russia, who are big friends of North Korea. They're trying to be a little less friendly. Yes. But then we're talking about a whole lot of factors at play that are a little bit terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I mean, it is terrifying to watch Donald Trump and the President of the United States play chess, frankly, or checkers, however you want to say it, with China, with Russia, and with North Korea and South Korea, frankly, and how he's going to interfere in that state and how he's so changeable. I mean, it's the last person in his ear, right, which we've seen in the first 100 days. I think will continue in the next 100 days.
I'm really surprised. We showed the clip just off the top about his use of the term Pocahontas, which is something that he referred to Senator Elizabeth Warren throughout the election campaign because of her questionable Native heritage that she claims to have. He's the president now. It seems a bit surprising that we're back to name-calling at NRA conventions.
I mean, I think if anything, this president he plays to his base, right? So he talks about travel bans. He talks about going to war. He talks about, you know, military might and those kind of things. And he gets in fights about apprentice ratings. So this is a guy that plays to his base, that makes noise. That's something that was popular before. So, yes, it is, frankly, offensive and inappropriate. But he's shown very little regard for the status quo or being presidential, I would say.
Let's talk about his 100 days. And what are some of his successes? What has Donald Trump done right in the last 100 days?
I think if you actually asked his base, which are not people that watch the news exhaustively, like maybe yourself or myself, they would look at, you know, the things he's talked about, which one is what has he done on immigration, right? So he has introduced a travel ban. That was unsuccessful, but he can say he tried. Obamacare, again, introduced legislation on that. Again, not successful, but he can say he tried. And then he talked about trade. He got them out of the TPP, and he did make a big move on NAFTA this week, which was frankly successful. So I think, you know, has some successes, but at the same time, he's in a logjam. He can't work with Congress, and frankly, they haven't filled a bunch of jobs that they should have filled months ago.
But on the NAFTA sort of success that he's, you know, there's a lot of concern in Canada and obviously in Mexico about the end of NAFTA, and he's kind of saying we're not going to pull out, but we're going to rewrite it. Dairy and lumber was such a big aspect of his talk about pulling out of NAFTA, yet they're not really that big of a part of NAFTA.
No, and I mean, NAFTA for him, again, this is about America first, right? So this is about jobs. And if you actually look at the election campaign, the whole time he talked, I mean, they're going to pull out of it entirely or renegotiate. So he just made a whole bunch of noise this week about dairy and about pulling out, and, you know, both the U.S. and Mexico and Canada said, fine, we'll rapidly renegotiate this. So whether or not that actually happens, I mean, all they've got to do is sort of step lightly, give a few wins to Trump, and then, you know, we'll see what goes forward. But I mean, he can say he did, at least in some aspect, deliver on what he promised.
What do you think that, I mean, these last 100 days have been bonkers. I mean, really, every day is kind of...
It's exhaustive. How has it only been 100 days?
That's what I was thinking.
It's been a year.
When we're at 100 days, I was going to say 100 years. It actually almost came out. What's the next 100 years or days going to be like?
I think there'll be a big, at least from a Canadian perspective, there'll be a big focus on trade. I know that the Prime Minister's office, the Ontario government, as well as the BC government in Alberta, are really focused on lobbying, getting down to the states, talking to senators. So I think we're going to see a lot of back and forth on that. One thing we should be wary of is not kind of jumping at stuff that's put out there. So Trump will say, oh, you know, Canadians are outrageous for their dairy, but we need to think about the long game and not jump at that and say, well, we've got to defend ourselves, because it really is about negotiating and appeasing this president while still looking at our own interests.
Amanda, thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me.
And I'll send it over to you, Danielle.